Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about NEOS, their calls, what happens when they don't go through their strikes. We're going to talk about their taxes. And congratulations to NEOS for having distributions every single month for 3 years on SPY. Just thought I'd throw that out. NEOS has turned 3 years old. But we're going to talk about taxes and what happens when they don't go through their strikes. Also, we're going to talk about there was 2 little mistakes on their sheets, but I caught it, but they also already corrected them. So not a big deal, no harm, no foul, but we're going to show where all those strikes are. Let's go ahead and bring this up. But first of all, as always, we are only sharing data. None of this is financial advice or any other advice. This is just Brad out on the internet. Here we go. Where did we finish up in August? We finished up in August below the strikes of SPY, and we're going to talk about that one in a little bit of detail. QQQI, we finished up below the strikes. IWMI, we finished above their strikes. BTCI, we finished below the strikes. Somebody made a comment in past video, we need to talk, and it's just like, I don't know what we need to talk about, because we are going to show you the chart, because they did not go through the strikes. IWRI, IYRI, they finished above the first strike, but below the second. And on the gold fund, IAUI, they finished through both of their strikes. But as you know, they do not write on 100% of the portfolio. And that is something that we should talk about, because that's important. Because writing through 100% of the portfolio is something that sometimes has issues. But we'll go ahead and go on. This month, they wrote on 55% of BTCI, 74% of the gold fund, 65% of QQQI, 76% on SPY, 72 on the Russell, 75 on the REITs. You can see where SPY-H and where QQQH wrote their percentages. And I'm also showing you last month's percentages, so you now have a little bit of information on which fund is writing how much and how much that has changed from month to month. But let's go ahead and move on. This month, starting at the beginning of the month, SPY about 1.5% out. Second strike is about 2.5% out. And you can read the chart. You don't need me to tell you each one of these, because you can literally see it. Because QQQI is 2% and 3.5%. The Russell was 2.2, but look at that second one, 5.6 out of the money, and that's where they started. BTCI was 7.8 and 12%. But that was on the weekend, or over the weekend. As of the close of yesterday, September 2nd, well, we already went through the first strike of gold, and those strikes on Bitcoin have also got a lot closer. But you can see where the strikes are as of the close of September 2nd. And we're just going to continue on. SPY. You can see where SPY ended up below the strikes, and you can see where the new strikes are actually sitting. Somewhere slightly above where they are today. But will SPY make a new all-time high? Since they did not go through their strikes, that tells me they should be beating SPY. And that is exactly what happens when you go on a 1-month chart, July 30th through September 2nd. You can see, because they didn't go through their strikes, they actually are beating SPY. That is what happens when it goes into a sideways market or slightly down, or basically in a down market. They will beat the underlying. So when somebody comes on and uses their little fingers and tells me all they're doing is selling your shares, I look at the chart going, you don't see the chart. Anyway, there you have the chart. So if we look at QQQI, it's a sideways market. Look at where we started and where we finished. Pretty close to the same part where we started to where we finished. That's what the chart tells me because it was sideways. And you can see where their strikes are, slightly above where they were last month. But what does that mean for total returns? Oh, look at that. Pretty much starting exactly where they started back in July for total returns. And you can see QQQI finished above the Qs. That's what happens when it's a sideways market and they do not go through the strikes. Just wanted to share that with you because maybe not, you might not notice that. Now, we finished up going through some of these strikes, and now we're going to talk about the Russell and where it went through the strikes, 4% and 1.9%. And what does that look like? Well, you can see where that ends up being. Now, the red line is a local all-time high. Will it get back up there? Don't know. But that second strike is well above that local all-time high. You can see that we went through both strikes last month because they're talking about rate cuts. And normally the Russell does better in a lower rate environment. But that is just something for you to be aware of. If I look at REITs, and this is getting income on REITs, because we all want to get a little bit of income off of REITs and our exposure to REITs. They finished below the strikes, but you can see, well, actually they finished one very slightly above the strike, but yesterday they went below. So basically, you have two strikes, one at 98 and one at 100. So the market has to go up. Just keep in mind, they didn't write on 100%. Yesterday, I covered State Street, and State Street writes on 100% or close to 100% of that portfolio. So they're going to have trouble keeping the NAV. That's why you see NEOS not have as much trouble because they don't write on 100% of the portfolio. At least that's my personal opinion, and it's not financial advice. But so far, that has been very true. If I look at gold, you can see we've had a big surge because everybody's afraid of long-term inflation. We had a surge. Pre-market, it was up even more. We went through the first strike, but even if we go through both strikes, our price per share will go up because they don't write on 100%. If they wrote on 100%, it stops. We're dead in the water. You won't see any price appreciation. That's why I kind of like funds. I'm finding that I like funds that don't write on 100% because that is what gives us upside movement. Now, BTCI, we all want upside potential with high monthly income on Bitcoin because that is exactly what we're going to get. So BTCI did not finish into the strikes. They finished below the strikes, and you can see that Bitcoin's down a little bit. That's okay. You can see where their new strikes are. But what happens when they don't go through their strikes? Well, let's go ahead and take a look at that. Well, look at that. BTCI beats IBIT. And somebody says, we need to talk about that. Well, what do we need to talk about? Because clearly it beats the underlying asset of Bitcoin. Don't know. I don't know what the guy's talking about. Obviously, he's not understanding that when Bitcoin or IBIT is down 5%, 5.5%, maybe the fund might be down 5%. But I think it might be the same person that's talked about SPY-H. And I said it had downside protection. We're going to talk about that one also because I think a lot of people are very confused. So here is SPY-H. The box is the protection. You can see how far the box is below the current price. I don't know what everybody's expecting, that the market goes down 3 or 4%. That box isn't going to help you at all. It's not. That is for a large downturn, not just a little 4 or 5% drawdown. That's nothing. That's a, I don't know. I didn't even know what to compare it to. It's nothing. But for your knowledge, at the top of the box, that's when your protection starts. Your downside protection is limited to the bottom of the box. If it goes out of the bottom of the box, your price per share is going to go down. That is just how it functions. And of course, the blue line up at the top is the upside limit. You can see last month they didn't get capped. So they saw all the gains of the market. They earned their income and they didn't get capped. So they would actually beat SPY last month. And that's a very interesting conversation because it doesn't happen every single month. And when the market goes up quickly, it doesn't happen. You're just going to get capped. But we went sideways last month, and I showed that. Now, on QQQH, and this is the old NEOS fund, or whatever, you know what it was, NUSI, NUSI, not NEOS. The old NUSI fund, they're paying about 9%. And this is on the Qs. You can see where that downside protection is, and we are nowhere near that downside. But if it goes into the box, you're going to see your price per share slow down, because that is where your downside protection actually is. Now let's talk about taxes, because everybody loves to talk about taxes, and we're going to talk about taxes. I normally don't share this, but I went and grabbed the tax information, and this is for what they call the fiscal year. Now, granted, what their fiscal year is the last 3 months. So this is only the last 3 months of their fiscal year to date. That SPY is 96% return of capital. But you sit there and scratch your head just a little bit because they didn't go through the strike. So they're not selling your shares. How can it be? That's where those 1256 contracts come into play. Just pointing out that, hey, we're at 96% right now. And there you have it. 4% year to date is going to be net income. There you have it. Now on the Qs, 100% return of capital for the last 3 months. Not bad. QQQI. The last 3 months, RWMI, again, is at 96%. And this can all change by the end of the year. But normally, if you looked at last year's to this year, you're not seeing a whole lot of change in how much return of capital is actually coming from NEOS. So that is the return of capital so far the last 3 months from the Russell. So now we're going to look at some of the other funds because they're not all built the same. This is the REIT, IYRI. You can see that the REIT is only 78% for the last 3 months and 22% net investment income. Just to make sure that you know that there is a difference between the funds. And 78% isn't that bad, but it's not the best. Just throw this out for you to. Every single one of these sheets is out on their website. So feel free to go out and download these sheets because you may or may not want to, or you can just watch me and I'll just bring them up every now and then. Just keep you up to date on the total funds. This is the gold fund. You can see that 87% is return of capital, 13% is not for the last 3 months. Bitcoin. Everybody has a little bit of Bitcoin. Somebody says 98. That says 78 right there. cumulative year to date. Took it from the website. Don't go out and say, oh, well, they just changed it today. I downloaded it yesterday. I don't know why people want to argue literally when the charts are right there in front of you, but that's okay. That's what they do. That's literally what they end up doing. I skip one. BTC I 96 for the year to date. Last month was 90 or 94 year to date. Last was 96. SPY-H 94 for year to date, 96 for the last month. So there you have it. Hey, gotcha. I know that you were just going out and looking at some sheet, or you grabbed the wrong one. So I greatly appreciate you because you always show up to my live streams, and hopefully you caught or catching the live stream for the members today at Circle. So I do run a little group at Circle, and we will be doing a live stream and talking about the markets. QQQH, 100% return of capital for the last 3 months. So there you have it. I think that's the last slide. NEOS is now 3 years old. They're very tax efficient. Troy will be coming onto the channel next week. So if you have any questions and you're a member, feel free to add them to the chat, and I'll be asking them if they have any questions for Troy that maybe he can actually answer for us next week when he comes onto the channel. So hopefully you find this educational, and Brad's a little bit funny on it now. And we're just going to answer a couple questions here. It says, hope the beach is pleasant today. The beach is pleasant today, but I'm working hard for you guys because Rex Shares is coming on to the channel later today, and I'm doing a live stream for the members. Hey, good morning to everybody. Bill, good morning to you. Good morning also. And I'm going to say good morning to you also. Anyway, we're all good. I am back at the beach. My daughter and her boyfriend, I maybe messed that up yesterday. My daughter and her boyfriend took off. They're back. They're working today. My wife and I are here at the beach, and we'll be going to the beach maybe this evening to enjoy the sunset. So hopefully we will know more. Is he going to be launching the international ETF next week? I do not know the launch date to those ETFs. Sometimes they can't tell us until the prospectus has been approved, and they can't talk about the funds until it's been approved. I know TDAC is tomorrow because the prospectus was approved a year ago. So that's how some of that really works. All right, let's read this one. I applied for tax refund because of all the RSC. I'm not American. Oh gosh. You know what? I understand being American has its benefits, but also has its drawbacks. Just thought about that. I like being American. My wife is European, so I get to see both sides of that fence on those. But right now, which one's better? I don't know. Sometimes you just have to really think about it. And it says this, according to the SEC filing, it says approximately September 10th. Well, I hope it's September 10th, although I probably will cover it to give us a percentage, but I am not going to jump into the international fund on the first day. If I do, it's only a few shares. Just like TDAC. TDAC is coming out tomorrow. I will not be buying a large bag of TDAC. I want to watch to make sure Cy writes the calls the way that he should be writing the calls, because just because it works with one might not work with the other, but there's no guarantee. We'll see how it all works out for us. But I'm going to buy a few shares because I want to be able to track it. I'll probably do maybe a little bit, 1 or 2 shares on the international fund so I can track that also. Understand, that's why you're one of my favorite. Hi, really appreciate that. At least I'm just showing you where things are at, telling you what I'm doing, and sharing what I know. So anyway, I appreciate everybody showing up to the live stream. And if not, and you're catching this later, you have a great day and God bless.